just say test test.
Out here.
Yeah. Oh.
Welcome.
Okay,
Welcome.
cool.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Hi, and welcome to the Content Strategy Meetup. Some new faces here. Excited to see you. I wanted to just cover a few little housekeeping things before we bring up Kristina. One thing is we would encourage you to tweet about the event tonight, and if you do, please use the hashtag CSSEA. It's hard to say, but Content Strategy Seattle, CSSEA. I also wanted to let you know that first of all, I should have said I'm Paula Land. I'm one of the organizers of the meetup. There's some other organizers in the room too. One of the things that we are starting to do is we're setting up a Slack channel for the meetup and for content strategists in Seattle. So we will, after this, send out on the meetup discussion board a link to that, and we'd like to invite you all to join us there and start some great conversations about content strategy in Seattle. Wanted to say, so tonight our event, of course, is Kristina. In December, we're going to have just a social event rather than doing a program. So there will be information about that coming out when we get that sort of organized. And then we will be back to programs again in January and February and into 2020. So please keep an eye out. Watch the meetup site. What else? We are recording tonight's event, so and actually live streaming it on YouTube for the first time.
Oh, wow.
So if you have any colleagues or friends who couldn't make it, you might want to let them know that, and they can certainly watch the recording afterwards. We'll post where that's available to be on YouTube after the event. I think that's all. We have cake in honor if any of you have ever been to Confab or know sort of the whole cake thing. We thought it was appropriate to have a cake to welcome Kristina to Seattle. So Laura will be cutting that soon, and please help yourself to pieces. And then let me bring up Kristina. So our format tonight is just quick Q&A. So feel free to ask Kristina any of your content strategy questions. I'm sure that there are lots of questions in the audience, and without any further ado, I don't think she really requires any other introduction.
Oh,
Kristina Halvorson.
Hi. I have a Madonna mic. There is a ball with a microphone in it that he's going to throw around that you talk into if you have questions. There's a cake. This is the best night of my life. Come up here for a little bit, even though it feels weird. I want to say right off the bat that I recognize a lot of you, and I know exactly none of your names. I have just enough of like a touch of face blindness to always forget people's names. Or I'm just really rude. You never know. So anyway, introduce yourselves and reintroduce yourselves. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for being here. What do you want to talk about tonight? What should we do? Should we talk about content strategy? I'm here to teach a workshop tomorrow of content strategy things, intro to content strategy, which is hilarious because content strategy, when I wrote this book, Content Strategy for the Web 10 years ago, was like, let's figure out what to put on this website page that doesn't suck. And now content strategy is approximately 80 different things. So I've been working hard to try to untangle that in my laboratory. And if anybody else has done that, please come up on stage with me today. So I welcome questions about all things content strategy because I assume that there are people here who are not just figuring out what goes on the website. So what should we do? Should we start? Do we have any, who wants the microphone ball? Yeah, we're off to a great start. Oh, thank you, my God. Oh, that was scary. Okay.
Hello? Am I okay, I'm talking into the ball.
That's the best thing I've
I
ever
would
seen.
save us all from the awkward silence. Thank
Wait,
you
it
for
doesn't
being-
work. It's the microphone ball that doesn't work.
Hello? No? Is the microphone ball working?
Wonderful. You guys
Hi.
have to turn around and look at her. She looks ridiculous.
Look, everybody look at my ball. Thank you, Kristina, for coming. I wanted to ask about the challenges that are going to be coming up in content strategy when it comes to voice interactions and the pile of content strings that one generates in creating those. And if you have advice or things you've run into, anything that might help somebody who's facing that challenge.
The best thing about that question is you have asked me a question about the thing I know the least about. So I want to thank you for coming tonight.
Anytime. I'll be here
Thank you
next
for
time
being
too.
here. How many of you are working on voice or AI right now? 2 people. Do you guys just want to get together and talk about this? So I will say that content strategy for voice is a small population right now. They're making it up as they go. I mean, they're pulling in anthropologists and like poets and programmers and architects, just kind of like trying to get this messy mix of folks to create this thing called voice and intuitive response. And you're not a person, but you're not a robot. I mean, it is. And so I think that what I know for sure is that trying to form these teams is an enormous challenge because we're still trying to get our arms around who needs to be at the table to make this thing work. I think too, people that are interested in moving into voice and AI, it's a really confusing career path right now because there are a lot of people who are trying to do it and not many of them are doing it very well. That is literally about all that I know about the thing. So do you have anything that you want to tell me for my takeaways?
I'm wondering if Kylie might have something to contribute to that.
I did? Yes! God, this is the best night. Is it basically it's just kind of a mess and people are making it up as they go? Yeah, that's good. Not so much? Well, somebody's doing it. Somebody's figuring it out, right? Sort of. I mean, Alexa knows when to bring up Jeopardy every night, so something's working there. Right? Okay, I'm sorry I don't have like any deep, searing insights on that topic, but thanks for bringing it up. One thing I am really good at is finding stuff online, so I will look for some good resources for you after this meetup. Janessa, make a note. Okay. What else?
Oh, sorry, a whole bunch of.
Before she asks, let me ask just so I can get a lay of the land here.
Whoa.
How many folks?
Squishy.
Yeah, it's a squishy mic ball. That's what I'm saying to you. Saying that out of context would be so weird. A squishy what? How many folks here are in marketing, content marketing? Okay, how about primarily responsible for website content across web properties? Okay, how about product content? Right, that's what I thought. Okay, great. Anybody else? Design, engineering, programming? Yeah, that's going. Great, okay. All right, great, thank you, that helps. I would love to talk about product
That's me.
content strategy.
Is it working? Testing. Talk loud. I could just yell at her. Okay, got it. Hi, welcome.
Hi.
I wanted to ask, I was just listening to your podcast interview with Ryan Skinner earlier.
Yes.
And you were talking about customer journeys a bit. Mm-hmm. And I was interested if you could talk a little bit more about that, particularly maybe just some great models or resources you have for how to start thinking about that, and then also more strategically, how to align all the various different content producers that may be in an organization. Like, for example, we're in product documentation for organization like Help and Guidance, but we know the marketing team's creating a whole bunch of content out there, and all sorts of other teams are creating content, and how do we bring them together when we don't really have some sort of central authoritative command to do that?
You people are not kidding around tonight. Okay, so the first part of your question was around customer journeys, and the second part was around enterprise content strategy.
No, it was around, because it's all public-facing content we're creating, so how could we leverage that customer journey? Do you have any advice on that, leveraging the customer journey? It seems like that's a good
Across
way to
the
bring
different-
folks together, yeah.
Yeah, that is kind of what I call, that's part of the enterprise content strategy framework, which I can talk about for just a
okay.
minute. So, customer journey, and is this in marketing context, or you're creating product content, and so you're talking about like all the way from like raising awareness through conversion onto product
Like
usage
setting
to
it up,
retention,
making sure it's
support, all
working,
that
yeah.
stuff. Okay, so here's the deal with customer journeys. Like they can be as simple or as complicated as you want them to be. I don't necessarily have like here is the authoritative source for customer journeys. You know, Ryan Skinner, so my podcast is called the Content Strategy Podcast. I know I was up all night thinking of that. And Ryan Skinner is an analyst that I've known for a long time who works at Forrester. He's based in London. And he has been focused, he was first focused on sort of like generally content strategy, and then he got into like content marketing, and now he's sort of talking about the threads between these different practices within an organization. So it really, it really depends. I mean, I'm sorry, it depends. I need to just wear my It Depends t-shirt to every single Q&A. How many products you're selling, where your customers are, who they are, where they're at in the life cycle. I mean, in terms of a customer journey, an enterprise can have 4, or they can have 400, right? And it also depends, I find that it's really good and helpful to have sort of the overarching customer journey, but then to have a lot of different iterations of it, depending on which product you're talking about, and so on. So, I mean, that's pretty high level, but honestly, there's no silver bullet there when it comes to a customer journey. As a tool for pulling together and kind of getting people aligned on the kind of content that you're going to create, when you're going to create it, et cetera. I think that it is, it can be helpful. I don't think it is the most helpful thing, because not everybody who is creating content is going to care about your portion of the journey, right? I mean, that to me, when you're talking about pulling together content teams from across an organization, is the biggest challenge, is getting people to sort of like look at, I mean, like let's say that you're in content marketing, right? And so you're really, really focused on kind of generating brand awareness and creating brand loyalty and driving people for leads and so on. Like that's your world, right? Like that's what you care about. And then over here you've got people creating product content documentation. Over here you've got people creating UX content for the interface, right? Over here you've got people, the corporate communications, who are worried about telling like the enterprise story in the first place, yeah? So trying to get all of these people on the same page that like, look, when a customer hits your content here and then they bounce over here, they don't care that you're 2 different teams, like you're all the same company. And so trying to get teams to understand and interact with each other at that level is very, very difficult. And really what I have seen, and this is, we call this kind of enterprise content strategy, because having, and it has to come from leadership, having sort of a set of shared guidelines and even core values around why we create content, who it's for, what our standards are for that content, is sort of a first step. But again, it's got to come from leadership. There's got to be that degree of sponsorship. And oftentimes it is a matter of even just getting like a marketing leader, VP of marketing, CMO, somebody from like tech support or customer service, somebody from product development, right, in the same room talking about their pain points with content, because then what happens is everybody goes, oh yeah, that hurts me too, right? And that is when we start beginning to create the connections and the conversations between teams that will begin to get people to care about each other's content, because that's really what it comes down to, right? You have to be able to connect from like A to Z all the way down. So is that, I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Didn't we have a couple more questions over here?
I thought I saw a second hand.
It was teamwork.
Oh, I see.
Oh, it's
Okay.
teamwork.
A team question, okay. Oh. Well, actually, yeah.
It's the live stream.
You ready?
It's the live stream, which I totally forgot all about.
Hi.
Hey, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us where you work?
My name's Nisha, and I work with Kylie at Microsoft.
Great. And what is your role?
I'm a content designer.
Great.
For a product too boring to enumerate. Anyway.
And I'm super passionate about my work.
I am super passionate about my team. And I'm passionate about making it better, right? But it's a legacy product, so
Sure.
It's going to take time. My question is kind of weird, but I was just thinking, recently I was talking with my other manager, Amy, in the back, and we were talking about like Google, like Gmail for me is starting to do that suggestive text, but it's actually weirdly good. Which I wasn't prepared for. I'm prepared for bungling efforts, but it's actually kind of nailing it, except for the profanity. It doesn't bring any profanity in. But sometimes it's so good, it actually feels like I'm almost impersonating myself a little bit. But it made me wonder if there's such a thing as like the uncanny valley that exists in like video games, where it's like you have this visual of somebody, and it's like CGI animation. It looks so much like a person, yet it's just like that 2% weirdly different, that it's plasticky and strange and disturbing, and it makes you uncomfortable.
I've been cringing for like 60
you
seconds.
know what I mean. It's like their mouth is just almost moving right, but not quite. I'm wondering if you feel like in content there is a similar kind of uncanny valley where it's like, okay, that's super plausible and actually creepy.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that every single conversation that's happening around ethics in design translates to ethics in content, how we're being spoken to, how we're being watched and repurposed and followed. I mean, all of that, I think, really ties in. And what's creepy about it is that one of the things that I find organizations pay a ton of lip service to is authenticity. Like, oh, we want to be authentic to our users,
right.
and we want to build trust and authentic, and nobody really can talk about what that means. But it sounds to me like what you're talking about is like we're going to be too authentic to where it crosses over into like
Right.
creepy and not authentic whatsoever and kind of robot-y. So yeah, for sure. There are so many extraordinary conversations going on around ethics and design right now, and conferences popping up, and I know that especially, I'm from Minnesota, and so we a little bit sit in the Midwest, and we're like, that's got to be tough, West Coast. You guys are in it. So it's really, but it's great to hear that you're asking those kinds of questions around content, for sure. So, but yes. I agree. It's sketchy.
It's not so much the invasiveness, I guess. It's more about like, okay, you've really synthesized kind of the human cadence, but there's just something like it's a bot or whatever, but it's like the cadence is there, and it just feels, it begins to feel more inauthentic for the very fact that it's done it so well. I don't know. It's a strange kind of phenomenon.
I, for one, welcome our robot overlords.
I have a question, actually.
Did you know Paula works for NASA? Are people aware of this? Like when I left, she was doing content inventories. Now she works for NASA. So,
I've done a content inventory at NASA and a big content audit.
That's extra amazing.
So talking about stuff like conversation design and AI and everything, that's all kind of cutting edge, cool stuff. But I'm actually curious what you think are sort of some of maybe the basics that are being kind of overlooked, or are there things that are getting a little bit lost, that people are maybe not focusing on some of the real basic things, kind of in favor of chasing the cool?
Yeah. I don't know if anybody knows who Dan Brown is. He really helped kind of like set the tone for the discipline of information architecture 10, 15 years ago. And he actually just recently did a thread on Twitter that was like, where are conversations about IA anymore? Like, why aren't we talking about information architecture like more than ever before? Organizing and creating like structures and meaning behind our content is more important than ever, and yet it's not sexy anymore, right? And so that is a little bit how I feel like. So I was actually just saying, like, this kind gentleman over here was like, oh, I'm so glad to meet you. I read your book a very long time ago. And I was like, yes, that's because I wrote it a very long time ago. But what is really, I actually, in kind of like tweaking things for my workshop tomorrow, I actually went way back to a presentation that I did in 2011 and pulled it up, and damn if it's not still relevant. Every single slide, which is like depressing, but also like, okay, we still have more work to do. But I certainly would say that there are some really basic things I think that are getting sidelined in favor of, so here's an example. So with product content strategy, has anybody here untangled product content strategy, content design, and UX writing? A few of you? Yes, pass the ball. So this is something that I've been talking to a lot of people and working to do. And one of the things that I'm finding is that a lot of folks who are doing UX writing, which it really only recently started to be called UX writing. I mean, literally within the last 3 years, maybe, and now it's just this giant discipline. But UX writers as a whole, or at least this is the tone I keep hearing, is they're just like, oh, why don't the designers ever call me? Or why am I the only writer across 6 product teams? I think the designers are being paid 3 times as much as I am, but I can't prove it, right? And this breaks my heart, because 10 years ago, the vision was, and then the writer will be at the table. And the writer is still not at the table. So that, to me, is a huge, giant thing that I'm just like, what are we doing? What have we been doing all this time? So I do think that there's a tremendous opportunity this is where I've been trying to work. More and more I'm working with sort of senior leadership around how their content teams are structured and what kind of the shared guidelines are across those teams and the processes and blah, blah, blah. And one of the things that I find is such an opportunity, and that I think a lot of managers and leaders have done in some product teams, is to really elevate the value of content within the organization as a whole. And again, it's got to come from leadership, right? Writers can only bang their heads against the wall so many times before they're going to get depressed and leave or quit trying, right? Not all of you. Some of you are tireless, fierce warriors for content. Yes. But that, I think, that's a really frustrating thing to me, to try to figure out, okay, where did we lose momentum? Did we lose momentum? How can we continue to kind of up our visibility, up our game, demonstrate value? I've got a whole section, a whole exercise on that in my workshop of how to demonstrate value to your organization beyond just, hey, can I come to that meeting? Right? So that's kind of a big thing for me. I do also sort of think that we continue to move so quickly in churning out new content, especially with content marketing, that we've lost sight of the art of the solid content cleanup or content audit, and that internal search site search is just broken across websites in general. I could go on. Yes, there is a list of things that were real. I actually just tweeted the other day that I remember when a content inventory and a style guide that didn't suck would blew people's minds, right? And that is clearly not the case anymore, but I still find that people are kind of chasing the next bright, shiny thing, and there are really some basic principles and tools and processes that still need to be valued within organizations, and I think that the organizations that do value them are the ones whose products are succeeding. So, thanks. I know, I'm sorry. You know what, maybe, should I just have a handheld mic and do Oprah, because the ball, it's really making people uncomfortable. It's squishy, and they have to talk into it. Okay, go ahead.
No,
Here,
just
I'll come right down here.
+1 on everything you were just saying. I've been trying to start.
Oh, wait, I'm
telling
sorry,
my
who are
teams-
you?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Wendy. I'm a senior content strategist at Indeed. I support several different job seeker products.
Great.
Here with my lovely colleague Tracy, who's
Hi,
a
Tracy.
UX writer. And first of all, I want to say +1 on everything you were just saying around information architecture and bringing us further upstream in the process. I've started to call myself a structural designer.
A structural designer?
Yes, so that people can understand.
It's a great time to be alive. We just make shit up.
You guys need to start looking at the
great.
structure of your products across.
Anyway,
Great.
storytelling. I support
you. Anyway, one thing I want to get the Hive Mind's input on this, yours obviously as well. We have been asked to prove to the fact of being paid a third of what everyone else is. UX content at Indeed is not positioned in the same business organization as our UX design and UX research colleagues. And in order to get ourselves transferred into the same business organization and put on the same pay band, we have been asked to prove our technical skill. So we've been going through this very long exercise of like heuristic evaluation and taxonomy and da-da-da-da. And I was just wondering if anyone else has had to go through anything like, if you have any tips for us of like how to prove the technical skill that's inherent in UX content, as opposed to like marketing content, or if you ask me, technical writing requires technical skill too, but that's a different pay
Well, I
scale.
just want,
and
what
yeah,
are they
so-
talking about? Technical what?
Right.
I mean, what is it that UX designers
Right.
are doing that
That's so
UX writers
technical.
can't or shouldn't be doing? I don't understand what that even means. Like, what are their, what?
Right.
Is anybody else, is anybody else dealing with this? Anybody else?
No.
Okay,
You're alone,
so
Tracy.
we want hugs afterwards. I mean, this to me is just like a failure of leadership, indeed. That they wouldn't, that, you know, that if like the value of like shaping words, shaping conversation, increasing user understanding, demonstrating value at like the level of language is not something that they think requires technical skill, I cannot help you. I'm sorry, I'm right up in your face. I just want to like, well, I'll take a step back. I'm feeling a little like, I mean, I don't even know what to say. You know, if a heuristic assessment, content assessment, any UX writer worth their salt can sit down and tell you what is working or what's not working with a product or website content. Taxonomy, I mean, take a half-day workshop and you know the basics of taxonomy. You know, I mean, there's so much stuff online now that it's like the internet. You can learn anything, and a lot of it is really good. So I don't even know what to say. I'm sorry, and good luck, and keep fighting. Is there alcohol here tonight? Cake! Cake. Is there alcohol in the cake? Just kidding. All right. Who else? Yeah. Sorry, I feel like I need to be I keep looking at you. It's not your fault. Or is it? Is it your fault? Is the ball your fault? Okay. All right. Good.
Hi, my name's Asher. I'm a UX writer at Alaska Airlines. And I'm running into microcopy questions. And I'm
From like your team members or within your
No,
own
just
heart?
for myself. I'm realizing
Okay.
that I need to kind of think more strategically about my content.
Yes!
And I'm not quite sure where to start, whether I should go to structured or unstructured or, yeah.
Well, what problem are you trying to solve? Like, let's start there. When you say I need to be more strategic, why?
We have some content duplication, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I like to do more single sourcing. And I just want us to make sure that we're consistent with our messaging throughout.
Mm-hmm.
And that's becoming potentially an issue for us.
Sure. So, I mean, you just said two things, right? Single sourcing is a thing that helps in terms of like avoiding content duplication or inconsistencies across products and services, right? Beginning to create some kind of consistency of voice, tone, reading level, word choice, et cetera. That comes down to sort of like organizational shared content guidelines, which is an effort and an investment and requires somebody to take care of them over time, but also can have real payoff. You know, the third thing is if you're dealing with inconsistencies across channels, sometimes having like a content coach or strategist, product content strategist, who can like be a resource to folks as they're sort of writing and coming in and building up content can be really helpful. But I'm delighted that you're seeing some of these opportunities. I mean, that means you're already thinking strategically about it, because strategic thinking isn't about like, okay, what am I going to do here? Right? Strategic thinking is about asking, like, why is this happening? And how is it happening? And what's involved? And what pieces of information are missing that's going to help me make better choices with the content that I'm creating? So, you know, I mean, you're off to a good start. And what I would really recommend is that, and I always recommend this to anyone who's wondering, like, how can I, you know, up my game at my job, or how can I demonstrate value, is to identify a pretty specific pain point. And especially if you can tie it to customer satisfaction or money or customer service calls or, you know, app abandonment or whatever, and really be able to hone in on that thing and that metric that you can help improve, pick that. So don't get overwhelmed with like, oh, the 80,000 things that I don't know. I mean, there are 80,000 things that every single person in this room doesn't know. So That's what I would recommend.
Hi.
Hi.
Cool. I'm Kate Bluth. I'm Director of Content Strategy at Media, marketing agency here in Seattle. I would really like to hear your take on growing and nurturing a team of content strategists. You know, what are the instincts you really look for when adding new team members? What are the things you like to nurture and grow? Like how do you kind of foster and build a team?
I love that question. Thank you for asking it. I need to get on the big stage to answer it. You know, I'm actually going to turn that back. Let's start with your question. What do you look for? What do you value in your team members or in your partners, or like what are the qualities that you value? Yeah. Curiosity. What else? That's it, just the curious ones. Yeah. Humility. No, not be afraid to say that what they don't know. See voice and AI. What else? Integrity is nice. Why is that specifically nice for content folks? Seriously. Yep. Yep. Good. What else? Flexibility. That is key in any content job, for sure. What? Customer empathy, also very important. I want to talk about empathy after this. What else? Initiative. Yeah, you know, and this is, I would say, a unique kind of initiative with a content team member for everything that I was just ranting about earlier. Like, initiative is not, oh yes, I will check the boxes off and I will do those things. Initiative is, I noticed this product team has been meeting, you know, all week, and they told me last Thursday they were going to invite me, and yet they haven't, so I'm going to go walk in the door and say, hey, y'all, here I am, what's up, let me catch up. That kind of initiative, right? Or to your point, hey, there's microcopy that's inconsistent across these 6 steps, you know, of this process, and that's because we had 4 different writers working on it, and I'm going to go in and try to. So that kind of initiative, I think, is really important. Agreed. What else? Sorry? Solid grammar. Yes. Why is that so hard? Why is it hard? I don't know. So I would agree. I would agree with all of those. I think that curiosity, it's interesting that that was the first one that came up, because that for me has been, at least for the folks who have worked at Brain Traffic over the years, that for me has been one of the #1 indicators of whether or not they were going to be successful there, especially because content strategy, we are all making it up as we go along. We have been for 20 years, you know, and we are continuing to do it. I mean, it's being defined in real time. And so you've got to remain curious about what it is that you don't know. And so that is really key, I think. I think the other thing too is that you've got to be collaborative. You know, I think the days of being able to like be the writer who just like gets the brief and goes and sits down and does the writing and turns it in and has a few revisions and then sends it on its way, that's done, or it should be done, right? We've got to be more actively collaborative with designers, with marketers, with our business partners, with SEO folks, with, you know, all those folks. So, does that answer your question? So that's tough, because I'm seeing kind of both ends of the spectrum right now. Either an organization is like, yes, content, and not only content marketing, which, you know, people are beginning to sort of nurture and grow those programs beyond just quantity, how much can we push out, but also, oh no, I forgot what I was going to say. Sometimes this happens to me on stage. It's horrifying. Let me think for just a second. How do we nurture? Oh yeah, and so they are investing in those teams, but oftentimes they're not, like they're still islands, right? Like, okay, content person, you're gonna go sit on this team, and now you're gonna go sit on this team, and now you're gonna go sit on this team. Report up to the person that doesn't really do content, and you know, good luck. And so on the one hand, it is an investment to sort of say, I'm going to be a manager or a coach or a central resource who will be available to and coach and continually provide learning and encourage people to share what they're doing and what they're learning and best practices and worst practices across my different team members. However, what I've also seen that I've been really excited about popping up is organizational content community of practice. And that is actually an enormously nurturing environment for content folks to be able to come together once a month, twice a month, once a quarter, and basically sit down and do like 5-10 minute shares of here's what I've been working on, you know, kind of those like best case scenarios, worst case scenarios, even just like show and tell, here's the thing I built, and then maybe even some open conversation with leadership around this is something I need to help do my job better, or I lost this resource and now this is how I'm hampered in my work. Those are, and also frankly, investing in people to go out and learn. You know, that I don't think that you can underestimate. Even just giving somebody $10 and telling them to come to this meetup, or, you know, that's really important too. I mean, that all comes down to feeling valued and understanding that leadership's interested in growth. Does that help?
Hi.
Hi.
That's loud.
I know, right?
I'm Allie, and I do help documentation at GoDaddy. And while we were talking about that last, I thought of a great follow-up question, and that's how are some really fun ways you've seen that you can get non-content people excited about and informed about content?
You know, I have to say to this day, the best case study that I have ever seen is when Facebook hired their first content strategist in 2009. And then in 2010, they had like 6. And what happened was these people literally banded together and formed Fox, which was Friends of Content Strategy. They made t-shirts, they made posters, they hosted happy hours. They were like, come to our brown bag lunch and we will, I guess they didn't buy the lunch because all the food's there free. There's free. But anyway, you know, we'll like host or whatever. But they literally began an internal campaign about here are the things that we can do to make your lives better. Here's how we can make you look like rock stars. Here's how we can elevate the things that you are designing. And now there are like 8 million of them. I mean, there's literally like 600-700 content strategists there now. But that is, they literally like just kind of went on a creative campaign around here's the value of content strategy, here's the value of what we do, here's some examples of how it's played out. So that was pretty amazing. One thing that people often ask is like, how do I create the best presentation I can to help people understand what I do and why it's important? And I have never seen that presentation because that presentation is like, here's what content strategy is. Here's the job description of a content strategist. Here are the 14 things that I can do for you and for your team. Here's my email and where you can reach me. And it's like, nobody cares, right? They sit there and they watch it and then they're just like, okay, thanks. And I literally, the best thing that I can recommend is that you find a problem to solve. You know, or I also often coach people with this, that if they are trying to get more resources or get on another team or, you know, just get a heightened visibility, that they try to think very specifically, okay, the folks around them, whether it's leadership or other folks who can basically like help them move, like what are their pain points and how can what are the opportunities that they're really excited about and how can I contribute to that to make them look like a rock star? Right? So those are kind of the ways that I've seen it work. And also, honestly, just to be like an optimistic, collaborative human being. I mean, that is a thing that I see a lot, especially with writers who are trying to write for products and websites, is that they become so beaten down and so disheartened that they just kind of become the Eeyore in the room. And like, don't do that. Like, get over it, right? Like, if you're not making any progress or whatever, there are 1 million other companies that want to hire you here. So, and I have no time for like, oh, woe is me, nobody cares about what I do. There are a lot of people who care about what you do, so like, go work for them.
Cool.
Ready to catch it.
Lighter than I thought. As a follow-up to that question, I think
Oh, sorry. My name is Arun. I am a UX designer. And strategist. So as a follow-up question, how can we in our profession like UX designers or strategists work best with content strategists? When should we pull them in? What do you guys value?
Let me put that question to the group. When should they pull a content strategist in? Sorry, at the beginning? Is that what I heard? How often should they pull the content strategist in? That's the thing. It is, and this is, I think, what so many UX team leads have not been taught or trained, or the expectation has not been set, or they haven't been that value has not been measured. I mean, you're here, you want to work with content strategists, but nobody has taught our UX designers where it fits in the process, which I wrote a book about that 10 years ago, right? I'm sorry, that was my outside voice. I gotta keep that my inside voice. But that is really, the question becomes, how do we stop thinking about content as an add-on service? How do we stop thinking about content as the thing that supports the work that everybody else is doing? Because that's not what it is. It fuels the work that everybody else is doing. And that is just a fundamental shift, I think, that we need to see in the industry. So my answer to your question is, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to sick a bunch of content strategists on you. I'm really sorry about that. That was maybe not appropriate. But my answer to your question is to ask for a content person on the team first. Don't have it be like, oh yes, this is the content person that is supporting these 4 product teams. Tell leadership, we need a dedicated content person on this team so that we can do our best work. Because otherwise the content is constantly going to be an afterthought. Or it's going to get done and then it's going to be forgotten about, and while we switch up steps and components and flows and code and all that stuff, the content's just going to die on the vine. So that is my plea to you. Thank you very much for being here.
Hi, my name's Heidi. I'm a content person looking for my next content adventure.
Hi, Heidi.
But the reason why I say content person is because over a decade plus in content, you can do UX writing. Then I remember a time when UX writing was no longer fashionable. And you do other types of writing, other types of content strategy. So across all of the work, one of the things I think people don't realize, on teams, kind of tacking on with your question, is that I feel like as a group of people, it's a type of critical thinking where, from my standpoint, the words or the content part actually comes last. I bring in the words, the stuff that might show up as microcopy, a video script, all of those things last. It's really the critical thinking and, where you might decide, we need an image here, we need this type, we need this type of interaction here. We need language, here. And that's sort of a challenging story to tell. But I have to thank you, too, because 10, 12 years ago, I would have never seen anything for a content strategist role. And now, especially post, it might be writer, content producer.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there, though. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, or even copywriter, oftentimes doesn't get included as a strategic role.
Sure.
But, post Great Recession, I can't believe, and I really thank you, that I'm seeing job descriptions for content strategists and the actual description has meaningful job duties.
That's great.
That align. So thank you for that.
Well,
but
I appreciate that. I want to be, I always feel like I need to respond to that with, welcome from my part of the contribution. What happened back then is that there were like 14 of us, and LinkedIn happened, and we like found each other, and we all like got together and kind of started talking and blogging and writing, and it was just a real watershed time for content strategy for a discipline that had been around for 10, 15 years. So, but yeah, I too am like, my mind is blown to see how many organizations are recognizing the value and the importance of content and are hiring and putting resources behind it. I think we do have a long way to go, but it's an exciting time to be in content strategy. I also want to touch briefly on what you said at the beginning, where there's, yes, there is the writing, but there is so much work before the writing. And that, when we talk about thinking strategically about our content, that is the workshop I'm giving tomorrow. I think probably a full third of it is on research and analysis, because that is where we lose time, where we're not given the time, where we're called in to say, okay, there's the box, fill that in, or here's the button copy, figure out what that is. That we're not brought along for, or we're not given the resources to do that kind of research, analysis, testing. Sarah Richard calls them content design crits. I mean, there's so many different tools, and so I appreciate where you're coming from in saying that like content strategy and all of the subdisciplines that live kind of within that big world of content across engineering and ops and marketing and all of that, having the time and the resources to be able to do that initial thinking and processing and analysis and is really, really critical. So thanks for your comments. That cake is looking good.
Hi, Kristina. I'm
Hi.
Kylie Hansen. I'm the Director of UX Content Design for Microsoft's Cloud and AI Studios. There are about 30 of us. 5 years ago, it was just me. And
wow, good work. Nice job.
Well, it's thanks to my team, really. They each bring like a huge, we're ticking a lot of the boxes, and we have been able to quantitatively isolate the value and the ROI of content design. So I'm super interested in the model that you referenced, talking about at the workshop tomorrow. And also, I think Jared Spool said it best when he said he's never seen a deck that's ever convinced a business leader of the value of design all up, let alone content design.
Mm-hmm.
I have, 20 of them if you'd like to try yourselves. But
Actually, what I would like to do is have you on my podcast.
I would love that.
Great. See me after the show.
Yeah.
Because I bet everyone here wants to know about those models too. So.
Yes. Yeah, it took us about a year, and I followed, I've been following you and those 14 people for 5 years and like taking the best of, and I wasn't sure it was possible, but through close collaboration with our data science and research directors, we were able to isolate that in many different ways, and we came up with about 4 things, like proving that it almost doubles the usability of our products. So
every single person here wants to talk to you when it's cake time.
Yes, please. Yeah, we have 30 folks now, but that sounds exciting until you think of Azure. It has 600 services, so that each one of those is a software product, and then in cloud and AI, there's 55 other products. So
yeah,
we're still way out, man, but we are individually embedded, and a lot of it's thanks to my boss, Jonah Sterling, who hired me because he knew the value of design. And if anybody's building a team, and that's what you got to look for, you got to look for that guy. And, or gal, and I'm never leaving.
Awesome.
Because
give him a high five.
He's a unicorn, yeah. And so when you
Great.
find that person, follow them. Yeah. So,
Great.
yes, but tell me about your model.
I can't wait. Which model?
You had talked about a model you were teaching tomorrow in your course about the value, capturing the value of content strategy.
Oh, no, that wasn't. That is like telling the story.
Okay.
So oh no, if I had a magical unicorn model, I would sell it and make $1 million. But
Well-
unfortunately I don't, because every day, every piece of data, every organization, every process, every outcome and goal, it's all different.
The great one, though, that is in the brain traffic book that Megan Casey wrote, it's more for documentation.
Yeah.
But that actually kicked me off, so thank
Great.
you.
The content strategy toolkit.
Yes.
Megan Casey, it's real good.
Sorry to be greedy, but I have one more quick question. Do you, are there any companies that, in your opinion, right now, are doing more than any other to validate content design? Meaning they're just running so many tests, they're getting so many metrics back, or telemetry that supports the critical value of content?
You know, that's difficult for me to answer because a lot of that information is held in-house. Right. I mean, we've had a few people talk about it at our content strategy conference, Confab, happening this May in Minneapolis. So, you know, who have come forward and been like, yes, this is how we're measuring. I think that the easier thing to do is probably to look around and see which organizations are working hard to publicly demonstrate and codify the value of content strategy, of content design. And we know who that is, right? It's Shopify, it's Atlassian, it's even been MailChimp for years and years. It's these organizations who are really stepping up and saying, it's Intercom, John Coleman at Intercom, that are stepping up and saying, we are investing in our teammates to build this practice and to share that information out into the world. And those are the companies that are working to set those metrics. So, yeah. How are we doing on time?
We're just about ready for cake, but we'll take one more question if anybody has one. Oh, we got one back here. Ready?
I feel like you all have been looking at the side of me all night, so I'm going to just talk to you. You can ask your question, but I'm going to talk to them.
My name's Emily. I'm from the dark side. I'm a product designer. This is sort of a overall philosophical question because my favorite aspect of doing design work is actually information architecture. And so in the current role I'm in, there are no writers in my organization, so I am doing that. But pretty much every one-on-one I have with my manager, I'm like, we need content people. But I don't have a lot of political power yet. Yes, seriously. It's kind of like, how, especially because a lot of the people who do design, some of them are good at content, some of them are not, or some of them are okay at content, some of them are not. Sort of the challenge of not being dedicated to a particular method or practice, I should probably say. How do you recommend for somebody who really cares about this stuff but also has to design button sizes and argue with their teammates about opacity and stuff like that?
How big are you? Not you, but
The organization I'm in, it's about 800 people.
Okay, so you are perfectly positioned to begin a content community of practice. Perfectly positioned because you care about it, you understand it, you're paying attention to it, you want to level up the discipline or the field or the practice within your organization. You're it. So your job is to go back and kind of start talking or emailing, or maybe you already know the 5, 6, 10, 12 people who are like, yeah, this is a tough nut to crack. What are we going to do, right? And start bringing those people together. I don't care if you read a book. I don't care if you listen, spend 60 minutes listening to a podcast episode, rewatching the live stream of this particular meetup. Just kidding. But that is, or sit down and just event session. You are welcome to come to a 50-minute event session about content at our organization. That is how then you all recognize your shared pain points. You maybe sort of unearth, hi, I'm really sorry. Maybe you unearth, here's some resources that we didn't know we had, or, that happens. Brain Traffic is a small organization and we constantly forget, we created guidelines for that already 2 years ago. Maybe they exist and nobody's been using them. So that's your charge. And you know what? I am actually watching this at a Fortune 500 in Minneapolis right now. There is a person who started at this company less than a year ago who immediately began a content community practice, and she got promoted 2 steps up within 9 months simply because she was kickstarting this conversation and working to codify the value of it within the organization. So that's your job. Who else is going to do this? Who else? Any commitments? Okay, I see the light in your eyes. Good work. Okay.
All right. On that note, let's thank Kristina. She is in town to do a workshop, but was generous enough to give us some of her time too. So we really appreciate it. Thanks for all the great questions. We've got a little more time in the space here. We've got cake. I think if, maybe Kristina will hang out a few more minutes.
Oh, yeah, no, I'll be here.
You can ask your questions directly. But again, thanks for coming, everybody, and keep an eye out for our upcoming meetups.
Good work, Seattle. Hey, I do want to say that it is cities that are continuing to sustain their meetups it's making a difference in the job market in those cities for content strategists and content professionals. So bring a friend next time. I mean, you all are doing good work here, so thank you.